The medical checkup begins. The alien nurse entered the examination room with her data tablet in hand, her long white coat flowing behind her. Her skin shimmered with a faint blue glow, and her 4 fingers tapped quickly across the glowing screen. She had been trained to handle every kind of patient, from lizard warriors to crystal bone diplomats, but today was her first time examining a human male. She paused at the door and stared at the figure lying on the bed. The human looked strong, but tired, his body bruised from battle. He wore only the standard recovery robe, open at the sides, and he seemed unaware that she had entered. She stepped closer. Her name was Gila, a young medical specialist from the Trinyari species, known for their calm nature and advanced knowledge of healing. She had been assigned to Earth-related cases because of her high scores, but nothing in her training prepared her for what she was about to face. "Patient 874, she said calmly. "I will now begin your scan." The human blinked and looked up. His eyes were soft, green, and tired, but he gave a small smile. "You can just call me Jason," he said, his voice low and warm. Zayla nodded, a bit confused by how casual he was. She activated her scanner, which floated out of her hand and hovered over his chest. A beam of light passed over him from head to toe. It showed minor injuries, dehydration, and muscle fatigue. Then the scanner stopped at his lower region. The light turned red. A loud beep echoed through the room. Zayla frowned. She tapped the screen again, thinking it was an error, but the scanner beeped louder. Unstable swelling detected. It said in a robotic voice, "Biological inflammation, unknown cause, possible danger, alerting medbay." No, wait. Jason suddenly sat up and reached for the scanner. "It's not dangerous." Gila stepped back, confused and alarmed. "Do not touch the equipment," she said firmly, her voice more serious now. Jason looked nervous, like someone who just triggered a fire alarm by accident. "I swear, it's natural," he said. "It's part of my body's normal function." Gila had never seen a reading like this. The area showed high blood flow, intense nerve activity, and rapid temperature rise. Her training told her this could be an infection, maybe even a parasite nesting inside the soft tissue. "Remain still," she ordered. "I need to scan the organ again," Jason groaned, placing a hand over the area. "This is so embarrassing," he muttered. Zayla didn't respond. Her scanner zoomed in, showing a pulsating shape under the thin robe. It was swelling, but without bruising, bleeding, or pain. This didn't match any injury or illness she knew. She opened her medical guide and searched for human male biology. Nothing explained this. Was it a hidden weapon? A defense mechanism? Could humans inflate parts of their body like some animals? Her hands started shaking slightly, something that never happened during exams. "I must call a senior doctor," she said, unsure if she was even allowed to continue. No, please," Jason said quickly. "It's just how male humans react sometimes. I'm not in pain. It's just ... a physical response to stress, or maybe to ... you know. Your presence." Gila's cheeks turned a deeper shade of blue. "My presence?" she asked. Stunned, Jason looked away, clearly embarrassed. "You're beautiful." "Okay, I didn't expect someone like you to walk in." "I wasn't thinking. It just ... happened." Gila blinked. The readings were still climbing. This wasn't just biology, it was emotion and chemistry. But could a body really change this fast just because of feelings? She stared at the data again. This wasn't an illness, this was attraction. Suddenly the scanner turned off. It had finished the scan and saved the data, but the system marked it as unresolved abnormality. Gila didn't know whether to delete the file or send it for review. Her hands hovered over the screen, frozen between duty and confusion. "Should I go?" Jason asked quietly. "No," she said. "You must stay until I understand this. This condition may affect your internal balance." Jason gave a nervous laugh. "Yeah, it affects my balance, all right." She didn't understand the joke. Zayla turned away and activated the room's privacy screen. She needed time to think, and she didn't want other nurses walking in. This wasn't just a case anymore. This was a mystery, and deep inside, something strange stirred in her heart, a new feeling she had never experienced in any exam room. She told herself it was just part of the job, but the truth was, she couldn't stop thinking about that swelling, that look in his eyes, and the strange warmth spreading inside her chest. She was a nurse, trained to stay calm and focused, but something about this human was shaking her from the inside, and she wasn't sure she wanted it to stop. Emergency protocol violation alarms were echoing through the hallway outside, soft but urgent, triggered by her scanner's automatic medical alert. The system had flagged the human's condition as a possible biological threat. Zyla knew the hospital protocols. When a new species showed unknown symptoms, the senior doctors took over, sometimes with full quarantine measures. She didn't want that to happen. Not yet. Jason sat on the edge of the bed, still holding the lower part of his robe in an awkward way. "I didn't mean to cause trouble," he said, trying to smile. "It's just a misunderstanding." Zyla turned to face him, her blue skin glowing brighter from tension. Her hearts were pounding, but her voice stayed calm. "You triggered a Class 2 alert," she said. "The system thinks there is a parasitic reaction or mutation. If the doctors see this data, you may be taken into full isolation and scanned." Without consent, Jason blinked. "Wait, they'll..." "What? Cut me open?" Zyla looked away. "Possibly. If they believe the swelling could spread or explode." Jason nearly jumped off the bed. "It's not going to explode. I swear. Look, this is just. It's called an erection. Human males get it under certain emotions. It's harmless." Zyla typed the word into her translator. The screen paused, processed, and then returned a vague explanation: temporary engorgement of reproductive tissue due to emotional or physical stimulation. She stared at the screen, then at him, then back to the screen again. "Emotional stimulation," she repeated slowly. "You mean? Because you found me attractive?" Jason nodded, rubbing the back of his neck. "I know it's weird, but you're beautiful, smart, and you touched my chest like a goddess from a dream. My body just reacted. It's not something I control." Zyla's antenna twitched. She wasn't used to this. Trinuri nurses were trained to ignore flattery, but this didn't feel like a joke. His words reached inside her in a way that bypassed her logic, but she was still a professional. "Very well," she said, lifting her scanner again. "If this condition is harmless, then I must gather proof. We cannot let this alert reach the council without data to explain it." Jason raised an eyebrow. "What kind of proof?" "A direct full-body heat reading," she replied, "and I must compare it with your original scan from earlier. If the swelling reduces naturally, that proves your explanation." He chuckled nervously. "Great. So I just have to calm down while a gorgeous nurse watches me like a science project." She blinked again, unsure if that was sarcasm or praise. Maybe both. She stood back, keeping her distance, and let the scanner pass over him slowly. This time, she added emotional readings too, something usually only used in psychological evaluations. The data appeared quickly, showing an emotional spike, attraction, nervousness, shame, and something else. A spark of desire. Zyla stared at the reading. She had studied dozens of species, but human males had an emotional complexity that was strange to her. Their bodies didn't just respond to danger or hunger. They responded to connection. The swelling remained, but the alert level was dropping. No danger, no mutation. Just a very personal reaction. Suddenly, her tablet buzzed. A message flashed across the screen: Chief Medical Officer approaching. Sector 7. Reason. Biological alert triggered. Zyla froze. She had only minutes. She turned to Jason, who looked more confused than scared. "Listen to me," she said quickly. "I need to protect you from a terrible misunderstanding." If they walk in and see your state, they will treat it like a threat. But if I erase the alert and hide the scan, they will never know." Jason narrowed his eyes. "Are you sure you won't get in trouble?" Jayla hesitated. The rules were clear. She should report everything, but her instinct said something else. "No," she whispered, "but I would rather take that risk than let them treat you like a creature instead of a person." She tapped her tablet and began wiping the red flag data, replacing it with a clean scan from earlier. The scanner's log now showed no abnormalities. The door chimed. A voice came through the speaker. "Nurse Jayla, report status of the biological alert." Immediately, she turned back toward the human. "I need you to lie still. Control your ... condition. And let me do the talking." Jason gave a shaky thumbs up. Zila took a deep breath, opened the door, and faced the senior doctor behind her. The human was quiet, breathing slowly and doing his best to behave. The crisis was over, but deep inside, Jayla knew this was only the beginning. Something was changing between them, and if her instincts were correct, this inflammation was going to ignite more than just a medical mystery. Forbidden's curiosity. Zila sat alone in the research chamber, surrounded by quiet lights and cold machines. The others had gone for their rest shift, and the corridors outside were empty. But her mind refused to rest. Her hands trembled lightly as she opened the hidden folder she had saved in secret. The human scan, the one she was supposed to delete completely, was still there. She stared at the image. The region of interest showed strange activity again, but it wasn't threatening. It was alive in a different way, almost emotional. The way the energy moved, the way the veins carried the heat, it reminded her of her people's bonding rituals where hearts linked through skin and breath, but humans were different. At least she had believed that until Jason. She leaned forward, letting her long silver braid fall over one shoulder. She replayed the memory of him looking at her, voice low, calling her beautiful. That word wasn't in any of her medical reports. It wasn't part of the job. But now it echoed in her ears again and again. Zila stood suddenly. She couldn't sit with this feeling anymore. She left the research lab and walked quickly toward the recovery wing. The guards didn't stop her. She had clearance. But her heart was racing like she had stolen something when she entered Jason's room. The lights were low. He was sitting upright, a bandage around his chest, eating something that looked like a protein bar. He looked up and smiled when he saw her. "Couldn't stay away, huh?" he said playfully. Zila didn't answer right away. She closed the door and activated the privacy seal. "No cameras. No logs. No questions. I need to ask something," she said. Her voice calm but sharp. Jason nodded. "Anything." She walked to his bedside and stared at him closely. "This reaction you had earlier, how does it work? Is it always triggered by attraction?" Jason blinked. That wasn't what he expected. "Well, yeah. I mean, sometimes it just happens. But when a guy feels something strong, like connection or desire, it reacts." Jayla's eyes narrowed. "Desire is not just physical, right?" He smiled. "No, it's also about who the person is, their voice, their scent, the way they look at you and make you feel something in your chest." She paused. "And you felt that with me?" Jason tilted his head, unsure if it was a trap. "I did," he said simply. "Still do." Jayla's hand tightened on the edge of his bed. "My people teach us to separate emotion from our work. But I keep thinking about you. Not just medically, mentally, personally." Jason leaned in a little. "I'm not just thinking either. You're the only reason this place doesn't feel like a prison." Jayla looked down, unsure of her own thoughts. Then her hand moved gently toward the edge of the bed where his scan had ended. "I want to see it again," she said quietly. Jason's eyes widened. "The swelling?" She nodded slowly, but not for science this time. For understanding, for trust. I want to know if what you said is true, if this ... reaction is really a reflection of what you feel." Jason gave a nervous laugh. Usually it's the guy who asks that kind of thing. Gila didn't laugh. Her hands were already moving, soft and curious. Brushing along the edge of his hip where the robe lay loose, Jason whispered, "Gila, are you sure?" She looked into his eyes, and for the first time there was no confusion. "I am not supposed to be curious, but I am. I want to feel what this connection means. I want to know why your body answers me without a command." She reached down, slowly, gently. Not like a nurse anymore, but like someone who wanted to understand something hidden and alive. Jason's breath caught in his throat. The room was quiet, filled with warmth instead of silence as Isla's fingers paused, hovering just above the swelling. Feeling the heat from it without touching her own body, responded with a strange tingling across her chest. Something her biology had never taught her to expect, and as she stood there, between duty and desire, she realized this was no longer about medicine. This was about discovery, about trust, and about a kind of contact she had never dared to imagine. Cross-species tension. Zila's fingers trembled slightly as they hovered close to the human swollen flesh. The heat pulsing from it was unlike anything she had ever scanned. Not threatening, not dangerous, but alive, responding to her energy. Like a second heartbeat, she looked up at Jason, and their eyes locked. "What are you feeling right now?" she asked softly. Jason gave a dry swallow. "You really want the honest answer?" Gila nodded without breaking the connection. "I feel like I'm floating," he said, "not from the medicine or the injuries, but from you being this close. It's strange, it's deep, and it's hard to control." Gila had no training for this. Her species used controlled breathing to connect during emotional moments. But this was different. This was raw, fast. A signal between two bodies that didn't need translation. She finally touched it, just one finger. Light as air. Jason gasped quietly. The scanner she had hidden in her pocket lit up. It recorded the surge of his emotional levels. Attraction, excitement, even a little fear. Zila felt her pulse skip. Her own temperature was rising, and her biosuit adjusted to the change. She took a step back, trying to clear her thoughts, but her mind kept echoing the feeling of his skin against her fingertip. "I shouldn't have done that," she said, breathing faster. Jason sat up, pulling the robe closer, but his eyes stayed locked on hers. "I didn't stop you," he said. "I wanted you to know it wasn't just biology. It's you." Gila closed her eyes for a second, fighting her training. Her people didn't mix emotion and touch, especially not with species outside their union. It was considered unsafe, even immoral. But standing here in front of Jason, she couldn't lie to herself. She wanted more. Jason slowly moved his hand and gently placed it over hers. "You don't have to be scared," he said. "You're not hurting me. You're making me feel human again." Gila looked down at their hands, her smooth blue skin against his rougher one. The contrast was beautiful, soft and strong at once. "But we're different," she said. Jason smiled. "Maybe that's why it works. You see something in me no one else saw. And I see something in you that no alien scan could show." Gila took a deep breath. "If the medical board finds out I erased the alert and touched a patient like this, they'll remove me from the healing program." Jason squeezed her hand gently. "Then we won't tell them." Gila gave a soft nod, and for a moment they stood in silence, their energy filling the space like invisible fire. Suddenly, a soft knock came at the door. Zila's heart jumped. "Hide the scanner," she whispered, pulling her hand away and stepping back. Jason slid it under the pillow just as the door opened. It wasn't the chief this time. It was Nurse Alexa, another Trinyari, older and stricter. "I was passing by," she said, scanning the room with sharp eyes. "I saw your shift was extended. Is the patient stable?" Gila forced her voice to stay neutral. "Yes, I had to confirm some details for his recovery chart. Everything is under control. Elixa stepped in farther, her gaze drifting from the screen to the patient. You were running an emotional analysis, weren't you? Zyla froze. Jason sat very still, pretending to be half asleep. Elixa tapped her wrist monitor. Be careful, Zyla. Human biology is tempting to study, but don't lose your boundaries. These males have strong pheromones. Their presence can confuse even well-trained nurses. Zyla gave a tight nod. I understand. Elixa stared a moment longer, then walked out without another word. The door closed again, and silence returned. Jason whispered, that was close. Zyla didn't respond at first. Her back was straight, her face unreadable, but her hands were shaking again. I need time to think, she said at last. I need to decide who I am when I'm near you. Jason nodded. I'll wait. However long you need. Zyla walked toward the exit, but before she left, she turned one last time and looked at him, not as a nurse, not as a scientist, but as a woman standing on the edge of something forbidden, and the tension between them didn't weaken, it grew stronger. The private experiment, she had broken rules, she had touched him, she had felt the warmth of his skin and the storm of his emotions travel up her fingers and into her chest like lightning. Now she couldn't stop thinking about him. She left the locker room and walked down the quiet hallway toward his chamber once again. This time there was no scanner in her hand, no excuse, no report, just questions. She tapped the door open. Jason looked up from the bed and smiled before he even saw her face. I knew you'd come back. Zyla stepped inside and locked the door behind her. I should not be here, she said, her voice steady but soft. But my body kept walking even when my mind told it to stop. Jason sat up, then let your body speak. Tell me why you came. Zyla sat beside the bed. I need to understand what this reaction really means. You say it's natural. You say it's emotional, but it changed me too. I don't understand how. Jason nodded. Then let me show you. Not like a patient, not like a subject. Like someone you trust. She looked into his eyes and placed her hand in his again. This time there was no hesitation. Jason moved closer and brushed her cheek with his fingers. Her skin sparkled where he touched, like her body was responding at a deeper level. Your face is warm, he whispered. Your eyes are glowing. I think your body understands even if your mind doesn't yet. Zyla leaned in. Then help me understand. Not with machines. With touch. She stood and activated the bed's privacy shield, a soft wave of light that turned the room into a hidden space. Then she turned back to him and slowly removed her outer robe, revealing her inner suit, silver, skin-tight, marked only by soft energy veins running along her frame. Jason's breath caught for a second, not from shock, but from the beauty of her form. Zyla sat beside him again and guided his hand to her chest. Does your kind react to this as well? She asked, her voice now full of quiet wonder. Jason nodded slowly. Yes, but this is not just reaction. This is connection. And I feel it right now. He gently traced the glowing line of energy across her chest. Her breathing shifted. Her eyes closed and then her hands moved again toward the place where it had all started, the swelling that first triggered the alarm, but this time there was no fear. She touched it again, slower than before, feeling how it pulsed with life and feeling. Jason whispered, You're not just touching my body. You're reading everything I feel. Zyla nodded. I feel your pulse. I feel your emotion. I feel your longing. It enters me through your skin. Jason placed a hand behind her neck and gently pulled her forehead against his. Sheila froze for a second, then relaxed into the contact. Her people didn't do this. This forehead press was a human gesture, intimate, close, real. She whispered, My skin is burning where you touch me. Jason laughed softly. That's what it means when two bodies want the same thing. Zyla let her Hands explore more boldly now, tracing the edges of his muscles, the curve of his side. The place where human and alien no longer felt so different, their breathing matched their heartbeats started sensing. The strange experiment became something neither of them wanted to end. This wasn't data anymore, it was feeling, it was fire. And it was forbidden, but they both knew they would return to this moment again and again, because something had awakened inside them that no science could name, not anymore. Asterisk medical ethics or desire, the light from the hallway poured into the room like a spotlight. Standing at the entrance was Chief Medic Velen, his eyes sharp, his expression cold. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. The silence said everything. Gila pulled her hand back as if burned. Jason sat up straight, the privacy field flickering out around them. The soft warmth between them collapsed instantly. Livelon stepped inside. This room was sealed. No exam was scheduled. No report filed. Explain? This now. Gila stood straight. Her voice caught somewhere between duty and shame. I was following up on a biological scan. The subject showed abnormal energy movement. I stayed to observe the results. Velen glanced at Jason. Without instruments, without staff, and without supervision. Jason opened his mouth, but Velen raised a hand to silence him. You, he said sharply, are not the one in question. You are a guest, a wounded guest. But she is bound by medical law. Trinary Code 9. Emotional contact with a patient from an external species is prohibited without scientific clearance. Gila's hands clenched at her sides. Her voice was steady now. I did not mean for it to happen. But something unique occurred. Something worth understanding. His body responded to emotional energy, and so did mine. I recorded some of it. The data is still in my private cache. Velen narrowed his eyes. You admit you hid data from the board? She nodded slowly. Yes, because I needed to know if what we felt was real or just chemistry. Now I believe it is both. Velen turned to Jason. You will be moved to another wing immediately. This interaction is terminated, and Nurse Gila will be placed under investigation by the board for violation of interspecies protocol. Jason stood. She didn't hurt me. She helped me. You don't understand what happened here. Velen didn't blink. I understand too well. That's why I'm ending it before it becomes irreversible. Gila spoke before she could stop herself. What if it already is? Velen paused. Are you saying you have formed an emotional bond with a human? Gila's eyes met Jason's. He looked back at her with something more than warmth. Something unspoken and unbreakable. She turned to Velen. Yes, I feel something. It is not weakness. It is not distraction. It is connection. Velen tapped his wrist communicator. Then your future has changed. You are to report to the ethics chamber by the next cycle. If you refuse, your credentials will be revoked. He walked out, the door sealing behind him like the end of a chapter. The silence in the room was heavier than before. Jason sat down slowly. I didn't mean to cause all this. You didn't deserve that. Gila looked at him. I broke the law. Not because I was careless, because I cared too much. And now they will take my position from me. Jason stood and placed his hands on her shoulders. Then come with me. When? I'll leave this place. I'll go back to Earth. You could start again there. No rules. No walls. Gila's heart beat louder than ever. To leave the medical path is to leave everything I trained for. Everything I was. Jason stepped closer. But maybe it's not who you are anymore. Maybe that person was only waiting for someone like me to arrive. She closed her eyes. The choice was in front of her like a bright line. One side held duty, cold and clear. The other side held fire, uncertain but alive, and for the first time in her life, she stepped off the clear path and walked toward the unknown. The diagnosis of the heart 12 high-ranking officials watched her from their tall crystal seats. Their faces were blank, glowing faintly under the cold white light. Behind Jyla stood a recording orb, capturing every second of her testimony. She knew this would be archived, maybe even used in future training to warn others, but she also knew she had to speak the truth. One of the council members leaned forward. "You are accused of emotional misconduct with an off-world patient. Do you accept or deny this charge?" Jyla raised her head. "I accept it. I formed a connection with the human. I touched him. I erased data. I chose my feeling over the code." A quiet murmur passed through the chamber. Another council member spoke. "And why did you do this?" Jyla placed her hand over her heart. "Because I believe our code is missing something. I studied medicine to heal the body, but this human taught me how healing also begins with trust and closeness. He made me feel alive in a way no exam or scanner ever could." Outside the chamber, Jason waited in a small visitor's room, staring at the wall. Unsure what would happen next, he wanted to fight for her, but this was her world, her rules, her choice inside. The council whispered among themselves. After a few tense minutes, the head speaker turned back to Jyla. "Your actions violated protocol, but they also revealed something important. The human's response to Trinari contact has opened a new path in our emotional biology research. However, your emotional attachment cannot be ignored." Jyla stood still. She was ready for any sentence. "You are given two options." The speaker said, "You may undergo memory purification and resume your position as a nurse. All feelings of this event will be removed. Or you may leave the medical system forever and keep your emotions, but you will never wear the healer's badge again." Jyla's hands shook at her sides. This was the final cut. Erase the feeling and return to duty, or keep her heart and walk away. From the only path she ever knew, she turned her eyes toward the far wall, where a screen showed Jason sitting alone. He wasn't looking at the camera, but she could see his hand moving in a slow rhythm, the way he always tapped when he was nervous. She smiled softly. Her voice rang clear. "I choose my memory. I choose what I felt. I choose him." Gasps filled the chamber. The council's seal cracked and dimmed. They signaled that her license had ended. Jyla bowed once and walked out of the chamber, not with shame, but with something stronger, freedom. Jason stood as she entered the room. "You chose me?" She nodded. "No, I chose us." He walked toward her, then stopped. "What happens now?" Jyla stepped forward and placed her forehead gently against his. "This is your world now," she whispered. "So I will make it mine too." They left the HFY station together, boarding a quiet shuttle bound for the outer colonies. No alarms, no guards, no scans. Just open space ahead as the stars passed by the window. Jason reached for her hand. "It still amazes me," he said, "how one small misunderstanding brought me something I didn't know I needed." Jyla smiled. "It wasn't a misunderstanding," she said. "It was the first true diagnosis of my heart."